Do you and your spouse constantly fight over money in your household? Well, if you do, hopefully this financial freedom video will help you to communicate better to help keep your home a happy place and avoid major money conflicts. So stay locked in. Hi, my name is Carson Graves, Certified Financial Planner and President and CEO of the Retirement Education Center.
And my name is Andrea Graves, Director of Operations at the Retirement Education Center. And we want to thank you for tuning in to our Retirement Education Concepts videos. These videos were created to help to make the difficult and confusing retirement process simple.
Absolutely, because with so many different strategies and so many different concepts, and of course so many different retirement products, it can become very difficult for consumers to digest it all. That's why we are so fortunate that we work with a team of expert advisors to help us build a financial roadmap that will let our clients know when, where, and how they can reach their retirement goals.
For additional concepts on how to maximize your retirement, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when we upload new videos. Carson, the love of money has been stated to be the root of all evil, but none more destructive than divorce, right?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, Andrea, because when we're talking about divorce just doesn't separate you from the things that are replaceable, like your home or maybe some other assets. But it separates you from the things that are irreplaceable, like your family, maybe even your kids, your friends. But in my years of financial planning, when I've ever seen any of my clients go through a divorce over money issues, typically the main reason for that is the lack of communication and not having a real plan behind their money issues. When you have a plan and you can understand where the root cause of your conflict is with money, you can absolutely better identify those root causes and start to try to prevent them. So today, what I hope to do is provide you with 5 major conflicts that you need to be aware of, and we're going to help you understand how to avoid those conflicts. But before we do that, there are 2 rules to retirement income that we like to give you. And Andrew, what are those 2 rules?
Well, rule number 1 is to never run out of money, and rule number 2 is to never forget rule number 1.
So let's go ahead and talk about 5 major money conflicts that you need to be aware of and how you can prevent them from destroying your marriage.
So Carson, your first source of money conflict that you have highlighted is people having different financial goals. How can this spark a conflict?
Yeah, when you have different financial goals as a married couple, it can cause many fights. You know, you may have one spouse, Andrea, that wants to save money, and you may have another spouse who likes to spend money. You may have one spouse who want to save money for the kids' college, and the other spouse may think, hey, we need to be saving for our own retirement. And of course, you may have one spouse who want to support a child, an adult child for that matter. Now, this can become a real major money fight when there's a second marriage and the other child is not the biological child of one of the spouses. When this is the case, we're talking about some serious money fights. And when you're coming to this particular situation in your marriage and you see this fight brewing and you see that you're having these fights more and more often, there are 3 things that you need to look at. I call them the 3 C's of marriage. You need to make sure that you, 1, communicate. 2, you need to make sure that you compromise. And 3, you have to collaborate. So you have to communicate, compromise, and collaborate in these particular situations. Because if you can do all 3 of those, at some point you may realize you can save for the kids' college, and you can also save for your retirement, and you can also reduce debt, and you maybe can even support that adult child who just hasn't gotten it together yet. But you do have to do those 3 things first in order to make sure that you can go ahead and start preventing the money fights from destroying your marriage.
Carson, that was a great perspective that you had on the last money conflict. And next on your list is the lack of transparency. So explain this further.
Well, we know this, you and I, of course, are married, and we understand that when you have the lack of transparency in your marriage, it can cause some huge problems. And of course, it can cause some huge problems when it's dealing with money. Now, one of the things you have to understand is that when you're talking about your money in your marriage, of course, if you have a joint account, each of you can see what's going on. But even if you have individual accounts, you need to be able to have access to those accounts as well for each other. Why? Because it is very important that I know her money personality and that she knows mine. And when we know each other's money personality, we can better understand how to deal with any money conflicts that may come about in our spending habits. So when you do have transparency, what ends up happening is that you can actually have an atmosphere that's conducive for you to have those conversations that are tough about money. Like, where are you spending this money? Why are you going here? What are you planning on doing there? All these different questions that you may have about the other spouse money habits. It can become very apparent when you have transparency with the assets of the money within the marriage. So when you do this, it can obviously be a bridge to solving many of those money conflicts.
Carson, the third money conflict that you have listed is excessive control of the finances. Now, I would assume that this would be the person that makes the most money out of the household, right?
You know, Andrew, that would be a normal assumption for many people, that the person that makes the most money would be the person that's having the excessive control over the money. But I can tell you from my experience, that is absolutely not always the case. I have known many times where, let's say, for example, the man may go out and make all the money while the wife stays at home, but it's the wife who makes all of the money decisions. It's the wife who's saying, you know, I need to count every penny. I need to check every receipt. If we want to go on a vacation, maybe the spouse that's making the money want to take a less expensive vacation, but the person who has the full excessive dominant control over the money may say, no, we want to go all out, fly first class, do all these extravagant things. And it can be vice versa, of course. But I want people to understand, having excessive control over the money is not very healthy for a marriage. You have to be equal partners when it comes to your money spending habits. Because if you're not equal partners, this is one area of finance where we have to take a step back as financial advisors. We may have to really have you get professional counseling in your marriage to understand how detrimental this can be to your overall health of your marriage. Because when you're talking about one spouse having all the control and demanding things from the other spouse, it's going to eventually put a strain on that marriage. And so this is going to be out of the scope of financial planning, and you may need to get professional advice and marriage counseling in order to avoid this particular money fight within your marriage.
Carson, another money conflict that you run into is a difference in investment risk tolerance. Now, I know you see a lot of this with a lot of couples, don't you?
Absolutely. I do see couples that come into my office and they're going to have different risk tolerances, and that's okay. You know, you may have one spouse on one end of the spectrum, Andrea, that's really aggressive and they want to be all in equities. They don't want to see anything other than trying to grow their money. But you may have another spouse who's more interested in protecting the money. They're interested in maybe bonds or maybe doing annuities or other insurance products. But that's okay, you know, because we're going to operate as a financial advisor and a certified financial planner. We're going to operate out of the 3 C's. We're going to communicate. We are going to collaborate, and we're going to compromise. That is how you do it. And when you do this, we can easily, on this particular money conflict, easily alleviate the pain here. Because what we can do is just, build a plan that's going to incorporate maybe both of their ideas. So we can have a plan that may have some equities and have some plan that's going to balance those equities with bonds or annuities. So this money conflict here, if you have different risk tolerances, should not be a major issue that you have to have a money fight over.
Now, Carson, number 5 is probably the master of all fights, and that is carrying excessive debt into a marriage or accumulating it once you are married.
Absolutely. Probably right behind infidelity, right? That may be the master of all fights when it comes down to it. But right behind that is definitely having too much debt in your marriage. Now, when I'm talking about excessive debt, Andrew, I'm talking about the kind of debt that really puts a major strain on your cash flow. I'm talking about the kind of debt that can lead into foreclosure, repossessions, bankruptcy, and of course, ultimately, maybe lead into divorce. Now, we know that many studies have shown that when a couple has a lot of debt within their marriage, they are more likely to get divorced. So we want to make sure that you understand that having excessive debt needs to be reduced or eliminated from your marriage money fights. Because if you can do that, your marriage is more likely to be solvent. So you got to make sure you don't ignore this particular issue. So if you are getting ready to get married, you need to make sure you have a great conversation with your spouse about what kind of debt they're bringing into the marriage. And if you're already married, you need to make sure that you have a clear conversation with your spouse on a plan on how to reduce all the excessive debt that your marriage is under, because you want to get rid of that stress. You want to get rid of that anxiety that will cause a marriage to actually break down. And it's very important that you understand the kind of debt that's really causing the problem. What I've discovered when I'm talking with many of my clients, most of the financial fights come from the debts that are really what we call bad debt. Maybe debts from your credit cards, maybe someone having too expensive of a car. The debts that actually build wealth, like a home or buying real estate, I've seen that actually bring a marriage together because you're actually building wealth. So you really have to get down to the nuts and bolts of the type of debt that you're under and that's causing the stress in your marriage, so you can have a better communication on how you can eliminate that particular debt. So the moral of this video is that when it comes to money fights in your marriage, you do those three things. You communicate, you compromise, and you collaborate.
Well, Carson, this was some great information, so thank you for your insight on this topic, and thank you for watching. And if you felt this information was beneficial, please like this video and share with others.
Please remember that these videos are created for educational purposes only, and that you should always seek out your own financial advisor, your own tax advisor, and your own attorney regarding your personal situation. Also, if you are looking for a fiduciary financial advisor to help you with these type of complex financial matters, we highly recommend that you utilize the links in our description below and go ahead and schedule a 1-hour free consultation with us today.
After this video, please check out our other videos that will give you tips on how to maximize your retirement. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share it with a friend. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you have questions,
we have answers.